Friends, thank you for tuning in to the Occlusal Table, where we bridge dentistry with business, culture, and current events. I'm your host, Taylor Jackson, and today for our Match Day series, we'll look at what it takes to become an orthodontic resident. Let's get started. So for today, we have my classmates, Christina Aponte and Jared Fletcher, and they will go right ahead and introduce themselves.
Hey, thank you so much, Taylor. Yes, I'm Christina Aponte. I am also a fourth year at Mary Medical College. I completed my undergrad over in Buffalo, New York, and I just recently matched into Bronx Care Health System for their 3-year ortho residency. And super excited, just excited to give you guys some tips today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jared Fletcher, originally from Natchez, Mississippi. I am also a fourth year at Mary Medical College. Did my undergrad at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, and I recently matched to Texas A&M University in Dallas, Texas.
Well, I am so proud of you guys. I know I tell you guys that all the time. So let's go ahead and jump into these questions. So the most common question, why ortho?
Yeah, for me, for personal reasons, I had orthodontic surgery right before dental school. I had it twice. And so for me, it was always on the radar going into dental school, but I really wanted to keep my options open, especially since I actually had not treated any patients in the clinic yet. But it just seemed like all roads led always back to ortho. And then with my case specifically, there was a little bit of relapse that followed. And so just I would start rabbit holing down into the Google Scholar and seeing, were there other patients with similar cases to mine? And it seemed to be a rarity in the ortho world. So I would go on externships and bring up my case, and professors would say, "Oh, don't worry about that. That never happened." I said, "Well, it happened to me, and so it could happen to other people." So really, it was just, if not me, then who? So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
For me personally, I chose ortho when I was maybe around 11 or 12. I used to get bullied a lot about my diastema, so not there anymore. So it kind of led me to ask my parents all the time to get braces. And when I finally got it, it just gave me a place where I felt comfortable, and they gave me the confidence to, smile and be around my friends and actually joke. And it made life a little bit easier because it was one less thing for me to worry about as far as my self-confidence. So it really gave me the opportunity to kind of discover who I was without the mental stake of having to worry about other things that take my focus away from, academia and actually making friends and being comfortable with people. So I just wanted to do that for other people, and that's my reason for why it worked out.
Awesome. So then let's jump all the way back into third year, maybe even second year, when preparing for the application process. What were you looking for in a residency? Like, how did you narrow down your choices? The different criteria that you guys had when researching different residencies. How did you know which ones to look at, or which ones were on your radar? What was important to you? Location, the amount of tuition, getting paid or a stipend? What was it for you guys?
Yeah, there are very few programs that pay in the ortho world, which can be incredibly frustrating, especially if you're looking at how much you already paid for dental school. So for me, I looked at location with dental school, and I knew I didn't want to rely on just that this time around. So honestly, I really didn't know what I didn't know. So it became a matter of just a lot of Googling, sure, but also going on LinkedIn, seeing who's at which program and which dental schools they went to, and then picking their brains. And then conversations with them, I started to see they'll start talking about lasers, they'll start talking about different technology that's in there at their programs, offered at their programs, or even are they able to request new technology to use on particular patients that may benefit from that. There were so many little tidbits that I just had never considered to even ask program directors. And so for me, it was probably right up until, if not during interview season, you're still learning little things that you may want to ask programs. So I would say my advice to my second year self would have been to start that process a lot earlier and to not assume that, okay, I want to see a wide variety of cases. Okay, great. Every program director, when you tell them that, will nod their heads and it just kind of glazes right over just because they hear it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it'd be more important to focus on like the deep, like little details. You may see it on the website, but really talking to residents as far as having a better understanding of what you even want to look for in a program.
For me, let's see, main reason how I did my initial search was, of course, money wise. I'm not trying to, be a super broke dentist, and then kind of location. I've always had my heart in the South, so I was kind of looking in that region, and I somewhat like the East Coast, so I looked up there as well. So those are the main things. The final thing just came down to really family, being close to family. So everything else didn't really matter so much to me at the time. Of course, I want to learn as much as I can, but you can't really, I don't think I was able to gauge that as well because until I actually got there in person and was able to see what they have, talk to the residents and see what they're able to show me in person, because I feel like with, not being there, they can tell you whatever you want to hear. And really, the websites don't have much. They all say the same thing, in my opinion. And you're like reading, oh, well, we see this many cases. Well, COVID's around, so you don't see that many patients. And none of it's updated, like for the most part. So I think for me, I don't think anything would have, I'm kind of like a go with the flow guy anyway. So I wouldn't have done anything differently, but I think the biggest part of what I learned, like the actual decision making, came when I actually went in person and saw these programs, and now I'm able to see what they have, how genuine the people are, and that really helped me make my decision as to where I wanted to be in the end.
Nice. So then even jumping into tips for your CV and building that, I know that you guys are both very involved. So if you can touch on the different organizations that you were a part of, as well as any tips for building your CV, or what is any type of organizations or leadership positions that you found that residencies were looking for when it came down to selecting who to interview?
Yeah. So for the CV, it's helpful to have a periodic review of your CV, but of course, dental school gets so crazy that it can, next thing you know, it's application season and your CV is not ready and you're scrambling to get everything together. So thank God for the search bar and your Google Mail. But yes, I was involved with ASDA. I was a District 4 trustee last year during COVID. Very interesting time. So of course, making sure that my CV catered to what being a district trustee looked like in a COVID world. So with that, I also was involved with the ADA. But I would say, as far as using your CV to stand out and to get those interviews, it seemed like, at least during the actual interview in person, that directors were asking me about like the skills section always at the bottom. So like if I had put, like I had done CrossFit for a while, so they were all asking about that. They were all asking, oh, you did acting for a little bit. Oh, you play the guitar. That was always something that was talked about during interviews. So it's almost like they look at the first page and then they skip to the bottom. That's not to say, that they didn't read all of everything, but they are very busy. And so to make sure that, use everything you can to stand out. And we all have a life outside of dental school. So definitely put those things on there. They will look.
For me with the CV, I did, I feel like in my interview trails, I only really had one school that really actually knew what I did, and seemed to kind of want to focus on that. For the most part, I felt as if I was kind of relaxed, especially with Texas A&M, just because it was more so just trying to get to know me as a person, as opposed to, hey, we see this on paper, let's just talk. And that's what I really enjoyed about, that particular interview. So I feel like the organizations are also, very important, but I feel like they're more so an eye grabber. So like I did SNDA, I did ASTA, I was part of Ortho Club. I do a few mentoring programs. But I feel like that's just to, in my opinion, just to kind of show that you're, well-rounded. You don't want to be a person that just sits around and studies all day and has like the high GPA, nor do you want to be the person with a low GPA, but you're in all of these clubs, or you have a great GPA and you're in all of these clubs, but you have no extracurriculars of like leisure time. Like, you don't do anything outside of school. So I think the CV, you just want to kind of center it around making yourself seem like you are involved in everything, from school to just, everyday life. Like, what do you like to do for fun? I got asked about mixed martial arts and stuff like that, or I got asked about artistry, like Christina said, like skills, So they want to know your hobbies too, just to see that you are a person that, can stay sane throughout school. Because if you don't have hobbies, I just, you may be a bit of a psycho if that's all you do at school. So yeah, that's my take on the whole CV process.
Right. It's all about showing how human you are, right? And what better way of doing that than through your hobbies and everything, but also that's reflected in our personal statement too, right? And I feel like that's where a lot of people have a bit of a bump in the road when it's saying, well, what do I need to write about? Like I've completely changed, from who I was as a pre-dent to now as a dental student. And with that, how did you know, like how to reconstruct your personal statement, or how did you know how to share your story?
I know a lot of people do look at their dental school personal statement and then kind of revamp it from there. I think that that's beneficial and to see how much you've grown. Personally, I basically trashed it all and then started over. It was basically like that first draft was just like word vomit. I had to get out in the paper. In fact, I asked my friend to look at it because he works in admissions, and we were on a Zoom call, and he goes, "Okay, that's done. Now let's actually write what you need to write." And I'm like, "What do you mean? This is my first draft." But you need someone to be very honest with you, especially with that first draft, because you are stressed and you don't know exactly what you want to include, and so much has changed since you started dental school. So I know I had some people were looking to go straight to professors to get that first edit in. Personally, what worked for me again is talking to friends, because whether they're in the dental world or not, it's still important to see how easy of a read that your personal statement would be. And then moving on to those professors and potentially residents that you may know that you're friends with or that you're connecting with over Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever the case is. But that personal statement, at least for me, my first draft, I started in January and I didn't feel confident in it until April. But again, that's just periodic review and waiting for people to get back to me, 2-3 weeks. So definitely, again, start early. That winter break is like, it's so nice for just sitting down with yourself, having the time to reflect on who you are and what you want to say.
Yeah, so I did the same thing Christina did. Like I just started from scratch because I don't even remember what I wrote about in dental school, to be honest, but to get here. But I know my first read just through recommendations was like to, send my stuff over to Dr. Lavelle and public health. And she's like, of course, you all know she's very honest. So like the first draft, she was just like, trash pretty much. And then I went through Dr. House, another person that's very vocal, you know, and he doesn't hold back at all. So he was like trash, you know. So that really, and that probably was my first and second draft from over Christmas break. So I thought I knew what I wanted to write about, and then I realized, you know, it's just not where it is. So probably didn't finish until we start something like May, I think. I don't remember when I opened up, but I probably didn't finish until that was probably like the last thing I finished. So around May sometime, I actually finished my final edit. And my thought process after I saw that, you know, I was being too generic in my response, trying to keep it too I guess too political in the sense that I wanted to give them something they wanted to hear versus more so making it personable to me. So I talked about how you know, where I'm from in Natchez, Mississippi kind of led me to the whole process of going to dental school, some of the things I would like to do as far as dentistry in the future, and just related them all back to my story in a way of well, actually, Taylor J helped me a lot too. So don't want to leave her out. So yeah, just kind of relating my story back to my whole process and, you know, in a page and making sure it's effective, but it also gave off who I am as a person so that they would want to meet me. It's just like little weird things that would keep, you know, catch their attention. Like I know the main thing I got asked about everywhere I went was because I talked about fear being a propelling force for me to find success in everything I do. And I don't think that's a perspective a lot of people take on fear, how fear can push you to do things and succeed in life. And, you know, so just using like little things like that to catch attention because you want to, you know, make sure those first few lines are eye grabbing and because they probably won't read the rest thoroughly.
So then you talked about, going to different professors so that they can, see your personal statement and see your story from in different perspective, right? So with that and going into your letters of recommendation that you do need, I think you need a minimum of 3? Do you guys need 3 or do you guys need all 5?
I think it's a minimum, definitely a max of 5. You don't need all 5, but it depends on the program.
Okay. And so then with that, how did you, maneuver getting those letters of recommendation? Did you get them all from professors at school? Did you get them from people that you shadowed with? Did you have like a packet that you put together? When did you ask? When is the right time to ask for a letter of recommendation? So that, the letter writers have more than enough time to complete those letters.
Yeah, that timing thing, because there are so many things outside of your control when it comes to application season, which is so frustrating, but it is part of the process. So for the ortho chair, definitely reaching out to her. It was January. And as far as you asked about a packet, Taylor, no packet, but because it was a COVID world for us, it was an email, which I hate asking for letters of recommendation over email. But with the ortho chair specifically, I had asked her over the phone, and then I had a follow-up email with her, like in regards to my letter of recommendation request. Here's my CV. As I explained, I didn't give her my personal statement. I said I was still editing because, again, I was not confident in it at that time. But my CV was done. And then I had a formal letter attached as well, with hitting like those 5 characteristics that ortho programs are looking for. So, honestly, the more you Google, the more variants in responses you'll find. But yeah, you'll see like flexibility, maturity, communication. Those are really the big ones. And then examples of how I showcase that. That was probably harder to write than the entire application itself because it's so specific and you really have to dig deep. But yeah, so I reached out to her about that, and then that letter was in on time. I also asked the Dean of Academic Affairs. But then my other letter my recommenders, I asked them later, and I wanted to time it out appropriately. So for example, my work with the ADA, I knew we had a meeting in April. And so I was going to see one of the individuals in person, and I wanted to ask him then. One thing I did not think about until after the whole application process was over with was asking people who potentially worked in Nashville or back home for me that were alum of programs that I was looking at, to have a letter from them. If I had a relationship with them, that would have been like a gold star on my application. But again, I hadn't thought about it till later. Yeah, I did not have a problem with having my letters in on time, but I know that some of my classmates did. And that again is just part of the process. So trying to get, everything in order in January with what you can control.
I kind of figured out who I wanted to ask based on conversations with, I'm gonna name drop people or whatever, like Kenneth Carter and Raven Douglas. Like they kind of helped me gauge who I wanted. And I initially wanted to ask someone outside just because ortho is something I've always shadowed. So I know a lot of orthodontists, but when I got here, I talked to an orthodontist and he said it's probably not the best idea to ask a practicing orthodontist just because of the hierarchy and the importance of the letters, how much weight they hold. So I ended up not going with anybody on the outside. So I asked all professors. And the way I kind of chose them is I guess it makes sense in my mind, kind of I asked one person that's over, community outreach, one person over public health, one person maybe academic affairs, ortho group. And so now in my mind, it kind of shows, hey, he's involved because they have to, put this stuff on the letterhead. So it's like, okay, he has all these things and he interacts with all of these important people, that have specific jobs in different areas. So maybe that makes me look more well-rounded, in the end. So I had more of a strategy I didn't really care who I asked. It was just more of, strategizing and making sure, those people could, one, write the best letter they could about me, but also send 2 messages at one time, pretty much. So yeah, and I send all of my stuff in January because I'm a pest about stuff like that. I hate that I can't control when they send the letters. And one letter ended up falling through for me. So I asked 5 just to make sure, I had enough for different deadlines and stuff like that. I would at least have the 3 already. But yeah, I'm a pest about stuff like that. So I asked everybody in January, and maybe every 2 to 3 weeks, I say, hey, got it coming up. Another 3 weeks, hey, still waiting on you, So that's just the type of person I am, but that's the, process I took with asking for letters of rec.
And that's the thing too. I mean, our professors can be so busy. So then it's like you give them, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9 months almost in advance. And this is not to, dog them out or anything, but it's like they do have a lot on their plate. So going up to them, even I've had a professor even come up to me and saying, hey, I am not offended if you keep on asking me about this, because, it needs to get done, right? Especially if they did agree to write that letter. But even with looking more at being well-rounded, let's go ahead and dive right on into externships. So especially since Meharry doesn't have an ortho program, when's the best time to go on externships? When is it too early? When is it too late? Do you advise going to the programs that are like your top programs or ones that you applied to, or should you, go to ones that, are kind of like in the middle ground on your ranking list? So what do you guys suggest when it comes to externships? How many?
Yeah. So again, the past couple of years have just been kind of strange with COVID limitations, but still, it never hurts to ask whether you see it on their website that they have an externship, whether it's as if the externship is discontinued for the time being, given the state that we're in, or even if it's just ask. There's site visits available. I did that actually at Texas A&M, even though they don't publicize it that way. That you can do virtual observation opportunities on Zoom where they'll let you sit in on the classroom while they discuss a case report or whatever they're discussing that day. They'll even see if you have any questions. They'll ask you questions sometimes. So I did that at a few programs. I'll just give a shout out to the Mayo Clinic. Their externship was a whole week. You do have to pay for your stay, but it's not like you have to pay to take part of the externship. But that was the most incredible opportunity, and again, it's a whole week. So coming from an area where we don't have an ortho residency, at home, it was nice to see how it's done. But that being said, as far as going on externships, maybe at your top program, I would say maybe not as your first externship, because I took those externships as opportunities for like interview practice, because they're going to ask you that why ortho question. They're going to ask you, what are your future plans? And they're not going to be afraid to say, well, why would you do that if, why would you only want to treat complex cases if Medicaid doesn't really finance them most of the time? Again, talking about how much we don't know at this point in time. I'll cut a class too, but I don't know anything about the Medicaid stipulation. And then that's my opinion. Given that, I also, the places I did do externships at, I did not get an interview. In fact, I did an externship after interviews were released at one program. I didn't plan it that way. It's just how it all worked out. And it was very awkward because the residents were talking about interview day right in front of me. And whether they knew I was not interviewing at that program or not, it was still very uncomfortable, because you already feel like you're in the way. And just needless to say, I'm glad I'm not at that program. But even some residents I talk to, like, oh, do you have virtual opportunities? Do you have, site visits? No, we don't, but that's a great question. Let me ask my program director about that. Now you're getting your name in the door in a completely different, positive way that most other applicants don't have. So I think externships are a positive thing. And as far as timing with your school curriculum, I know that they're going straight to the INBDE. So given that timing, studying for that and the GRE, really taking a look your second year to see when those externships would fit based on how long each externship lets you stay.
Me, I didn't go on. I was supposed to go on answer in order. I think the second year is probably like after second year was the best time for us. I don't know how every school, does their testing and stuff like that, but us having taken part one after first year, being free after second year, it made like that summer. Let's see, actually no. What we started 2018, finished 2019. Yeah, so when COVID first hit, like that was the prime time for us to go on externships. But because of COVID, I was supposed to go to UPenn for an externship, and that got canceled. And me not really knowing anything about like COVID at the time, or how cautious I needed to be, I just didn't take the chance. I did go to one program, and because of like how the interview process played out this time around, unless you don't have an ortho program at your school, I don't see that externships are very beneficial in my experience, just because you can get to the program, you can like it, they can appear to like you as well. And then, when the time comes around and you apply, it's almost like a, stab in the back feeling almost, that you don't even get an interview at some of the places you took out the time, because usually when you extern at places, these are places you really want to go to. So in my opinion, I got interviews at all places I didn't extern. The only place I came close to externing with was VCU. They have a virtual externship, and she remembered my name when I got there. So I thought that was pretty cool. She, just from email, I didn't even attend the virtual externship, but she remembered my name. But other than that, just, I didn't have any interaction with any of these schools before I applied and before I went to the interview. So me personally, I can't say that they're beneficial, nor, they may be beneficial to, getting selected, but I mean, it's kind of like a toss-up thing. You just don't know. So.
And also something that I forgot to mention before too is that the GRE preparation. When did you guys take that? What's a good score? Do you think that kind of made or make you or break you when it came to getting an interview at certain schools?
The GRE, I would say more, at least in what I've seen and heard, there's the most mixed information when it comes to the GRE and expectations for it. And when you contact program directors or residents or faculty, they'll all say, like, do your best. I had one faculty member say it has to be the 90th percentile. I didn't get an interview there. I did not get in the 90th percentile, but there was no clear-cut number of what exactly was expected, or if there was a cutoff for applicants. I took mine March 1st. So I had studied for it over winter break, which actually was just honestly, I was just overwhelmed with personal statement, CV, letter of recommendation request. And that was such a waste thinking about the studying that took place during that time. I was trying to basically read Webster Dictionary, and that's not helpful for anything. But so definitely ask people how to study for that, I would say, because you don't want to waste time during winter break when everyone is having fun with their friends and you're studying for GRE. So you want to make the most of your time. But I mean, yeah, maybe Jared has a different experience, but I just never received a clear-cut answer of what was a good score.
From what I've heard, some of the programs say 60th percentile. I know UNC has a cutoff of 60th percentile in all categories. If you don't get those, you don't even get an interview. So I know I was like 1 percentile off for them, and I just never got a call at all. So I didn't think it would be that big a deal, but some schools do weigh heavy on it. When I went to one school, they asked me about it. They said it was lower than what they usually see, which I didn't think it was that big a deal, but that's the perception, and that's what people kind of lead you to believe it's not that big a deal. So for me, originally I planned to take it after second year, but our school, the clinic time, actually the classes got prolonged, so that took up my summer to study for it. So I studied over Christmas break and took it January 4th. So about a solid 2 weeks I kind of put into it. And they asked me, what could I have done better? I was like, I studied for 2 weeks. Maybe I could have studied longer and I would have done better. But I feel like as long as you have the answer, they don't necessarily, I don't know. I don't think they really care about it that much, but I feel like it's a point of weakness to ask you about. So just something to bring up. But there are people that you will interview with and they have lower scores than you, but you get asked the question, why is your GRE so low? So who knows what a good GRE score is, so.
So even with that, right, jumping into those times for interviews, did you guys have a mix of in-person and virtual? Were they all virtual? What kind of questions did they ask you, or any types of tips when going in for those interviews?
Yeah, I had half and half in person, half virtual. The in-person interviews, they really do cost-wise that up. So making sure that you are prepared for that. Have a piece of paper ready. I had one interview where they wanted me to use a piece of paper and take me on a journey. It was explained to me, take me on a journey from kindergarten to present day. And so for kindergarten, I had to draw a circle on a paper and show him the paper. Then I had to solve for SOHCAHTOA, and I showed him that. And then he said, okay, we're done with the journey. And it was just trying to get me off my toes, and it worked. But you don't show that. It was virtual, so it was a little bit easier. But also virtual interviews, they are long days. They can be, especially with difference in time zones. You may be starting at 7 o'clock in the morning and going till 4:30, and that is back to back to back going through Zoom rooms. But some other programs, they were just spread throughout the day. One program, they had asked me, we talked about a research project that I was involved with, and then they said, well, let's take it a step further. What's your design like? How would you change this? Does your null hypothesis change if you do this? And asking me like specific things about my project, but in such a way to ask me just to test if I knew terminology as it relates to research, because it was such a heavy in research program. But for the most part, it really was very your generic why ortho, what sets you apart. That's a big one. I feel like in interviews, you get this nod, and at least the way I perceived it was like it was a good thing, it was a positive thing. If you respond in such a way that they like, they'll let you know in like a kind of way, and then they'll leave it at that. That's how I feel. That's where I matched. They liked my answers. But again, like I said, I liked the externships because I kind of already had my answers already formulated, and with already expecting what they may ask as follow-up questions. So I felt more prepared with that. But also from like a female standpoint, it was nice to be on externships because like you try out all the shoes, like you buy a new pair of shoes, and like just doesn't giving you like those flats that just don't fit well, or you trying out the heels, whatever the case is. It was nice to get that out, know which shoes worked, which didn't. And so that way I was very comfortable on interview day. But yeah, other than that, no like outlandish question. I mean, maybe like, if you weren't a dentist, what were you going to be? What qualities did you get from your parents? Yeah, nothing too crazy, at least in my experience. But I think one thing, if I could go back, I wish I made better relationships with the people that I was also interviewing with, because those people will be future colleagues, and it would have been nice to connect with them on Instagram or something, so that in future AAO meetings we see each other. Hey, I remember you from our interview, but I didn't get your name, or it's been so long. So don't forget that part. They are definitely going to be in your future. Another question too, there was one program that wanted us to talk about advocacy efforts as they relate to ortho. So be mindful of the fact that ortho could have a better presence at pre-doc and pre-dental events, and advocate on behalf of our profession so that we don't lose control over it, over service that we render to patients specifically, that general dentists and other organizations are taking over. So being able to advocate and speak on behalf of your profession is really important, and they wanted to see that, it seemed.
So I had one virtual interview, the rest in person. The virtual, I didn't really like that much. I don't think you get to get the full experience, nor do you see. Well, actually, they didn't even take me to see the any of the facility. It just was a video. So those things you can kind of cover up what you want, and you can show what you want. That I don't, I'm not a fan of. The in person, I think, was more authentic. I got to see, different technology they have, the cleanliness, how they interacted with, everybody from if they had a patient there to staff, and just how they work together to kind of, make sure this is the environment for me. So I liked in-person interviews a lot better. A few things I did before I went, I really sat down with Taylor J again, and kind of went over some of my answers, and got a perspective as to, like, some answers were okay, but how could I go deeper? And it's almost like a debate match. Like, you want to know, what's the follow up to whatever your response was. If you have an answer for something, you kind of want to know the follow up, because you may get a question after that leads deeper and you didn't necessarily think about it. So it helped me kind of solidify how, take my answers from good to great. I took a piece of paper with questions on it, because they always ask you, do you have any questions? So I don't want to sit there like, So I pull out the paper and I say, yes, I have a question for you. And if they were in a certain, over a certain department, or they specialized in laser surgery or something like that, or 3D printing, I have a question for it already. So I'll just go to that section and I'll ask them this question. So that way they want to talk longer. And my dad always told me, like, the best interviews are when you make a person talk about themselves. So that was kind of like my strategy, especially if it was a conversational interview and they're not trying to ask me too many questions. I just find out what they like and I say, me too. And we just get to talking about it. So, and that kind of made everything go by fast. Like, if you have any nerves at that point, once it feels like a conversation, it just, it alleviates everything else and it all goes smoothly. Trying to see if there's anything else I did. I connected with a few people that were there with me. Some you some you want to connect with, some you kind of shy away from. Other than that, I think that was like my main goal going into interviews. Just dress to impress from a guy's perspective. Not trying out, a bunch of different shoes, just make sure they look nice. That way, because I did get a lot of compliments on my shoes. I got compliments on my suit. I got compliments on my tie. So you want to make sure like everything looks solid. And that's another thing I kind of had to think about. Do you want to, be not necessarily flashy, but do you want to show who you are and what you wear, or do you want to be conventional and wear, play it safe? Some people have the idea that maybe you want to wear, I don't know. I don't know if Christina I don't know what you've heard, but like, people saying wear what you have in the in your headshot, or do you, go all out and kind of show yourself? I took a risk. I took that chance, and I was just like, I want to show them who I am and how I dress, because I think that is a reflection of you as well and your personality. So for the guys, I don't know about the females, but for the guys, don't be a little afraid to kind of show who you are and how you dress. Don't, because if you look good, you feel good, you interview good, everything goes well, and smell good too. Always keep some good cologne. So those are my tips for in-person interviews.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, you got to keep those with you, right? So I guess moving on into our last question. Is there anything that you wish you knew before applying anything you would have done differently. I mean, well, probably not too differently because you matched, but just anything that you're like, man, I know I would have definitely maybe even gotten more interviews, or I would have, went into this interview more confidently if I knew about this. Any types of tips that you would give to the classes under us that are going to be applying to ortho to be in your shoes one day?
Yes, as it would relate to the financial piece, I worked with Sally Mae. There are, many student loan lenders out there, but I worked with Sally Mae for undergrad and for dental school. And for me, it was just, I thought, okay, let's do the same thing for residency. My program pays its residents. However, there's an enrollment fee of $30,000 due ASAP, which they tell us that, of course, on interview day, that, but you don't know if you will be matching there, or if you're not done with your interviews yet. Maybe you would like to rank another program higher. You just don't know. So it wasn't as if I was, selling Girl Scout cookies to raise this $30,000. So when I had matched, of course, I'm thinking, how am I going to get this? It'll be easy because I'll just request the loan through Sally Mae. However, because it's a hospital-based program, it's not listed as one of the programs affiliated with student loan services, companies. And so then I looked into private loans. And so then that's a whole nother, if you're taking out a private loan, it's a very expensive process. And again, I wasn't ready to start paying it off. So again, the reason I'm mentioning this is just to be mindful of these fine print, things that may surprise you later on. And trying to figure out, do you have a family member that can lend you the money until you start making a salary in July? That is a big ask. And so trying to figure out what works well for you. I just didn't realize how slow of a process it would be. And so I wish that wasn't a surprise to me. But as far as things I would have done differently, again, I've thought about this often, because you are asked, what do you think set you apart? How do you think that you were different than other applicants? And really, it's there's just so many intelligent applicants every single cycle, and it's very competitive, and you feel very lucky on this end of things after match day. But as far as what I would do differently, I'm happy with how many schools I applied to. I applied to 22 programs, which was again a very expensive process, but I feel like it gave me more opportunities for interviews. I would follow Student Doctor Network to see, which programs came out with interviews, and that was a very stressful thing. I wouldn't recommend that, but at least I knew, okay, I have this many programs left. And I may have even applied to 25 if I could go back. And again, that's to have options for myself. That's the biggest thing, because you are investing so much into your future, that why not invest a little bit more so that you are at ease after match day?
I think one of the only things I would have done differently is, like Christina said, apply to more schools. I only applied to 15 or 16 schools. So I would have gave myself more of an opportunity, but I don't think there is anything I would have changed, because I ended up where I wanted to be. I'm kind of like the philosophical person, in a sense that, had I done anything differently, maybe I wouldn't have ended up, exactly where I want to be. So I think just people coming after me, apply to as many schools as you can possibly afford. Don't be like me, in the sense that sometimes I have I guess I'm overconfident. So I don't, I probably could have applied to a few more schools and been okay as far as finances, but I'm just I think very, not in a cocky sense, but I just, I've put in the work, and I think I'm, a good candidate to get in somewhere. I would also, save up for sure, as early as possible. especially if you come in knowing you want to specialize, for sure save up as much as you can, because I know sometimes I would pay back on loans and stuff, and that's, like, that's money I could have, it's given to me to support my dental career. That's possibly money I could have used to apply to more schools, but in the end I didn't have it. So that's something to think about. But other than that, I don't think I would change anything. But I don't know how real we get on this show. But I will talk about, hopefully, if like Black males see this, or minorities of any kind, just like, please apply to like specialty programs, because on my interviews I was like the sole Black male everywhere I went. There would be plenty of females of minority ethnicities, but it's like I would be the sole minority in it, and I'm okay with that. I went to LSU, so I'm like, I was kind of, I'm already conditioned for that type of environment, but it just makes it hard, and you kind of, it can really make you feel out of place. So like, if there's any way, minority males could get into specializing or ortho, or not being afraid to apply and don't really doubt yourself, that would be my tad bit advice for people coming after me. Like, don't be afraid, and kind of have that confidence in yourself regardless. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on my experience.
Oh yeah. Jared and I had an interview at the same program, and it was like the best. Like, I got the email for the invitation, and then I got a text message from him, and he was like, at the program, and I like dropped what I was doing. I ran over to his clinic, and I was like, Jared, let's go! Like, so excited, and it was nice to have somebody there to just be on that same crazy ride that is the application process. Also, a tip that I forgot to mention too: if you can learn Spanish, I feel at every program they were talking about all this Spanish-speaking patients and the Arabic patients that they had seen all the time, and patients from everywhere. But those were the big groups that they mentioned. And so if that's something that you're interested in, if that's something that you want to include, if you just are that person with extra time to learn a new language, that would definitely be beneficial. And I know Jared and I both talked about the financial piece, just to give an actual representation of what exactly we were mentioning. For example, that externship at the Mayo Clinic for a week, with the flight, the food while there, and then also lodging, it was about $1,000. Of course, GRE, paying for the GRE and study materials for the GRE, that depends from person to person. For the 22 schools, it was about $3,800. That's including no interviews. And then per interview, it can vary. It depends, is your classmate going to be able to drive with you to that location, or do you have to fly, or can you stay together? So that varies. But I knew it was going to be expensive, but when you're looking at $10,000-ish, if you apply, if you're like me and apply to that many programs, that was a lot to swallow, especially when, we are students. So like Jared said, definitely saving up while you can.
Absolutely. So finances are definitely key when it comes down to this application process, for sure. So if you're interested in specializing, please make sure you save up, probably since freshman year, if not before that, just putting aside at least a little bit of money, like from some of the refund check, just to say, okay, this is going into like my application pot, because yes, they definitely are expensive. I think it's $189 for the first application, and then $89 additionally, right? And then there's supplemental fees for some of the schools. And then on top of that, you guys had in-person interviews. So there's that, with lodging, possible flights, gas or rental car, food. The list goes on and on.
Or scooters.
Yeah,
Christina and I rode scooters back.
Road scooters, times are tough.
Right.
Ride a scooter.
Exactly. Yep. Ride a scooter. But yeah, those are definitely some of the things there to consider if you are interested in applying to orthodontics or just any specialty in general. But before we close out, if this episode helped you in any way, please give us a thumbs up and click on the subscribe button so that we can reach more viewers like you. But are there any closing remarks from you guys? Where can the people find you?
Where can they find us? Well, first of all, enjoy, just taking in this last semester, because when you do match, it's just like a weight off your shoulders that you could never imagine. So, but that being said, just like Jared said, it's all about lifting as you climb. And so, making sure that as you keep on going and following your dreams, make sure that you remember there's a class to come right after you. So very excited to see where the next year takes everybody. But yes, on Instagram at Christina_Aponte. So that's CHRISTINA, Aponte, APONTE.
Closing remarks. I don't know when this video will be posted, but good luck to everyone tomorrow. Taylor J. And yeah, I really just same message as before. Everyone don't get so hooked on what the profession looks like, any of these specialties or dentistry in general, any healthcare field. Just stick your neck out and go for it. That's all I would say. But I think my Instagram is at Fletch_DDS, FLETCH_DDS. If I'm not mistaken, I'm hoping that's it. But yeah, so if anyone has any questions about ortho, anything, of course, feel free to reach out to me. I'm open book for the most part. So yeah.
Absolutely. These two are definitely excellent assets. So feel free to reach out to them, DM them if you're interested in ortho or just want to make that connection. But I do want to thank you guys for being on the show today. And again, congratulations on matching. I know that you guys have been talking about ortho since day one. So, so that's definitely an amazing accomplishment for you guys. But that's all we have for today. Thank you for sitting with us at the table, and be sure to stay flossing and keep flossing. Bye, guys.